Hey, chiropractors, welcome to Modern Chiropractic Mastery with your host, Dr. Kevin Christie, where we discuss the latest in marketing, business, and professional growth with some of the leading experts in the industry. Welcome to another episode of Modern Chiropractic Mastery. This is your host, Dr. Kevin Christie. In this episode, I have Dr. Beau Beard. I'm going to be interviewing him, and I wanted to have him on the show. He's someone that is doing a lot of things in the profession and for chiropractors on the education side, but has also built a really good practice. And I wanted to tease out what it took to position himself as an expert in the community. And when you do it well enough, and this again may not be your goal, but when you do position yourself well enough in the community, sometimes it will transcend the community and you can find yourself with side hustles that can sometimes turn into main hustles or give you a sense of purpose. And we dive into that as well. But the real meat of what we talk about is how you can position yourself as the expert in particular niches in the community. And really, I like to unveil what the early, as like Beau talks about, kind of that first 5 years of a practice, because a lot of times we see established practices and they look great and they're busy, and the doctor might be carving out their next phase in a way, or they don't do some of the things maybe they used to do, and you don't see what the first 5 years look like. And so sometimes if you're not careful, you think it's the practice just comes with it, like you're just busy, it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna open up a practice and in 15 years it'll be busy. You have to see a lot of times what that first 5 years looks like, and it can be challenging. So I like to try to give you that perspective with some of our guests, and Beau and his wife have built a great reputation, great practice, and and he's got his own podcast, which we talk about. And so he's doing a lot of things now that serve a purpose for him and for other people there. So without further ado, here's my interview with Dr. Beau Beard. All right. Welcome to the show, Beau. I really appreciate you hopping on here and telling your story and getting a little bit of information on how you've grown your practice and positioned yourself as an expert in the community. Before we dive into that, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your practice as it currently is.
Yeah. So thank you for having me on. Our practice has been around since 2014, and my wife and I, Sloan, started in 2014, not on purpose. We kind of got our backs to the wall, and that ended up being the best decision long term. But we thought we wanted to go work for somebody and then, kind of get our chops and go start a practice. But luckily, over a decade in practice now here in Birmingham, Alabama. Started, I think, like a lot of people, very sports chiro minded, came out of school adjusting, ART, basic rehab. And it's kind of evolved as techniques and concepts have evolved, and very heavily involved in like the DNS world. We had an office at a Greystone Country Club with Mark Blackburn, who's gotten pretty popular here nowadays. And so involved in a lot of sports, running, golf. My wife is a collegiate gymnast, so gymnastics. But the further we went, the more it's become like, I think this is an evolution for a lot of docs, is we just see a lot of stuff now. Because if you get good, I think you get referrals for everything. I still love treating athletes, but it's become more of a general practice the further we went into it.
Yeah. I actually had a cool opportunity in Birmingham back in 2011. I was traveling on some PGA Tour events. This was a Champions Tour event. I forget the name of the course that's really well known in Birmingham, but it hosted the Champions Tour event.
Yeah, so Regions Tradition is the Champions Tour event. Now it's at Greystone. It may have been at Shoal Creek at that point. But, yep.
Yeah, it was at Shoal Creek. That was a really cool experience. I got to stay at a house of a guy that lived there that hosted not only the golfer, but me. And it was nice. Birmingham was nice. It was a cool area.
Oh, yeah. We love it.
Are you from that area originally?
No, I'm from Illinois, and my wife is from Tallahassee, Florida, and we broke down on Highway 65, which cuts through Birmingham, actually going back from Tallahassee to St. Louis, where we went to grad school, and spent a whole day at a car dealership or auto body shop, and they got us back on the road. And we're like, these people are nice. And we came back and visited. She applied for some jobs, and we literally knew not a soul here, and our parents both thought we were crazy, but here we are, 12 years later. So
that's the best story I've heard of how you ended up in a city.
Yeah, we always say we broke down and people are like, come on. I'm like, no, there's a newspaper article in the lobby out there. Just go check it out.
That's amazing. And did your wife go to Florida State?
No, so she's the only person of her family that didn't go to Florida State. She went to Ball State because she would say the same thing. Not that she wasn't good enough to do gymnastics. Florida State, they didn't have a gymnastics team.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
she had to go out of state and ended up in Indiana, which is also why we didn't end up staying in the Midwest. She was kind of done with the Midwest after going to Logan. She's like, give me back down south. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I went to Florida State, and I can attest there's not a gymnastics team there. I had a cool opportunity to be on the strength conditioning team as a volunteer, as a student volunteer, and worked with all of the sports except for football because they had their own program, and I think it was baseball had their own program. But yeah, no gymnastics, but a lot of other sports. So
But they do have
cool.
a circus
They
training.
do.
Yeah, something there. It's circus
It's
college. Yeah.
actually, yeah, it's really big. And maybe that's why they don't have gymnastics. They did the circus instead. And I had a fraternity brother that was on I don't know if it's called the circus team or just say he was in the circus, right? But we used to, back in my day, JD Drew was a baseball player
Yeah.
there.
Yep.
He had a great major league career, but he used to hit balls into the circus. It was in right field over a
Yeah.
street, and that's how far he would hit them. All right, let's dive into some of the fun stuff there. One of the things that I've just I've been practicing for 21 years now, and over time, I kind of see people come and go and do things, and sometimes, I mean, you and I have never met in person. We are going to have dinner next week, which is cool.
Yeah.
And I was a guest on your podcast, and I know we've kind of come across each other online and stuff, but I noticed some of the things you were doing some years ago early on in your career, and it's been cool to see how you've uh, positioned yourself in the profession. But before doing that, like most people, you've had to, obviously position yourself in your community. What are some of the things you did early on to do that? I know you have kind of a little bit of a niche in working with runners and things like
Mhm.
that, but what'd you do to establish? Obviously, we've already set the context that you weren't from the area. It was new to both of you, and you came in and kind of guns a blazing. What were some of the things you did to accomplish that?
Yeah. So if you've ever read the book, Let My People Go Surfing by Yvon Chouinard, the starter or the founder of Patagonia, I happened to read that book, not because I was getting into business, just happened chance when we started our practice. And I already kind of had this idea in my mind of kind of guerrilla marketing, of like an anti-marketing, like, hey, let's not do all the traditional stuff. Part of it because we didn't have the money. We didn't have the budget to go out and buy ad space. And, at that time, radio and traditional ad space and all that was still in play, and Google, SEO, YouTube was just kind of up and coming. So it was kind of a necessity that we said, okay, what can we do? Well, we're both athletes. I was really getting into running, especially trail running, which was also experiencing a boom as an industry at the time, which was a good stroke of luck as well. And I honestly just started, asking if we could go work races. And that's what I had done in St. Louis as a student, is help with like the Go St. Louis half and full marathon. And I thought, that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to go work these big events, and these patients will just flow in. And that's, that's not just how it works. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, what are we going to do different? Well, it became two things. It became, I got to go beyond the elevator pitch. So I got to show them why we were different. We talk about injuries. Hey, get on the table. I'm just going to do a little something, try to work you up. And then, hey, come to the office. So it's kind of like a working interview environment for us. And then the other part was, me being, an athlete and being competitive, I was like, well, I'm going to go out and try to win these races, get on the podium, wear a farm shirt. And I kind of maybe stupidly over pressurized myself to win these races or do well, which did work out because I did okay. And it did kind of put us in a position like, oh, you're a good runner. Now, like I do, just because you're good at a sport does not mean you're good at treating that sport, but it does help. And I think it did help me have some sort of pseudo expertise in running. And then I did like running and I wanted to continue to learn. So I just kind of realized like, okay, I'm getting pretty good at running, but I'm not elite. So if I want to get good, I needed to learn more. And that was kind of like chiropractic. I needed to understand how to get better at the thing. And as I did, it kind of evolved into, okay, I understand why maybe runners are treated in such a way that isn't getting them better or keeping them better. And maybe I can change some things in our practice. And that's kind of evolved, into a course called Rethinking Running Rehab and how we kind of go about treating runners here. And it's just been it's been a really fun thing because it's something we already do. And if I can tell a quick side story on that,
Yep, definitely.
we we were very lucky that we were both athletes. So Sloan got involved with CrossFit as CrossFit was booming. I was doing running. So we were just involved. Well, then we got busy in practice.
Mhm.
And we got busy, and about 9 months into the first year of practice, we were like, yeah, stuff's slowing down. We're not seeing as many new patients. Like, what's going on? And we both just looked at each other one day. We're like, we're so busy that we're not doing the things that we're involved in from a marketing standpoint. I wasn't going out to these running clubs. She wasn't going into the gym as much. She wasn't doing as many competition. I was like, we need to literally look at that time as marketing and make sure we make it to the gym and make it to these run clubs and literally it flips. So that's something I've always advised, interns and new docs with us is like, hey, can you just pick something that you're truly interested in? Don't just do it to market or people are going to probably call your bluff, but just be active in that group, immerse yourself into that group. And, if it's authentic, I think people will see like, oh, he's interested, she's interested. They're marrying that with what they do professionally. And it's just like, it's kind of, you're already going to be doing it. So why not, spin it into a marketing play as well?
Yeah, and to your point, interested, right? I definitely agree is if you're good at something. And again, whether it's yoga, fitness, tennis, golf, running, whatever, there's a lot of things that you can get involved in and be active in. And if you happen not to be, right? So like I am not a runner or a triathlete, but I've done really well over the years with that group. It was because I was interested. I was ART certified but I really learned back in '06, '07, '08, in particular, the first few years of all of the types of injuries, all the things they're dealing with. I knew how to speak the language, right, and all that. And so they knew I was interested. They knew I knew about it. They knew I knew how to treat it and assess injuries. And it did provide me with the ability to overcome the fact that I wasn't involved in it. So it definitely helps to be involved, right? Like the
Hmm.
CrossFitter chiropractor always does better than the non-CrossFitter chiropractor, but you can still do it. So that's one thing. And again, you can like let's just use the golf one because the golf one can be tricky because it's so hard to get good at it.
Hmm.
Whereas other things, like tennis, not easy, pickleball, easier, but you don't have to be a five handicap golfer to play golf and to treat golf injuries. Just you really do have to understand it. Chiropractors, if your website traffic or Google Maps visibility has felt a little unpredictable lately, you're not imagining it. A lot is changing behind the scenes. AI is reshaping how search results show up. Competition in the map pack is getting tougher, and simply ranking well does not always translate into new patients. That's why Propel Marketing and Design is hosting a free chiropractic SEO workshop. You'll learn what's actually changing with Google Maps, how AI is impacting the way patients find and choose clinics, and what small, realistic updates you can make this year to stay visible and competitive. This is not a high level talk or a bunch of jargon. It's a practical step by step workshop built for busy clinic owners who want clear direction and next steps they can actually implement. Save your spot for free at propelyourcompany.com/MCM SEO workshop 2026. And we'll see you there. Now, I want to pick your brain a little bit on that idea now that it's 2026 and you guys have a pretty robust practice, but you had mentioned where you get busy and you start to lose some of your time to markets like that. I know you two have, I think, two children
Hmm.
now, right? So you
Yep.
got the family thing going. Have you guys been able to carve out time now to do marketing? I know you have team members now. Are you delegating a
Hmm.
little bit of that to them? Tell us the progression for the chiropractor that no matter where they're at, but early on you have to do a lot of things.
Hmm.
Maybe you have time to do more things. You don't maybe have family yet. You're not busy yet, and then you get there. What's the progression from where you were then to now? How the clinic is able to be marketing a lot and say grassroots, but maybe it's not on your shoulders or Sloan's shoulders only.
Yeah. If I start kind of at the end, what I tell our docs now is, use the brand that we built instead of trying to market yourself. Like you do need to market yourself, but like we should have pretty good notoriety within the community. Like try to, we had to cold call a bunch of people. Like people were like, what do you do? What's the farm? And it's like, okay, it exists. It's a brand. So use that. So it's a little bit easier to open doors now, but we give, the docs now the same advice. Like, we tell them two things in particular, like pick something and get involved, right? Try to be as authentic as you can within that. But also that's like a big part of our marketing budget is like, we'll pick a group of people to treat for free. That's like a specific type of gym owner, whatever it is, a club or something. We'll say, hey, that's like, those are dollars lost per se, but that's also time in the clinic where you're not having to go outside and market if you get them in the clinic again to get that working interview.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, yeah, I kind of feel like the old guy sometimes. I'm like, oh, these new docs or interns don't realize how much we did up front. And it's like, I mean, we were at, maybe an event or two a week in terms of a dinner or, some sort of networking thing, plus working a race or an event almost every weekend. I mean, all the way to, community fairs at churches. And I mean, stuff that's kind of goofy. And you're like, okay, I'm never going to do that again. But you're just kind of doing a little bit of everything. And then you start to figure out, okay, what are higher value events in terms of like, okay, people will come from those things. Lower value events, but also we've had some of our new docs like recycle those. Like, hey, go hit a touch point of something that seemed lower value, but you kind of need to go back through the process. And then we try to get them to understand they're, one of our mutual friends, Brett Winchester, told me early on, he goes, those first 0 to 5 years, you have to work harder than you ever imagined, but it sets you up for basically like letting the gas off for every 5-year period after that. And I took that to heart and we just kind of, went hard in the paint when you can. Now it's kind of interesting because we have more time from not the necessity to make money based on what we're doing in the clinic per se. So I tend to be out in the community as much as I was in the beginning. It was like right in the middle. I just got in a vortex of like, I'm super busy. I got to be in the clinic and then I'm doing all my other stuff I want to do. And now it's like, okay, I got kids and stuff, but I'm not seeing, 100 patients a week like I was. It's kind of dialed back. So it's coming full circle again. But yeah, the evolution was just do everything you can, start to figure out your own funnels, solidify those funnels. But I'd say I don't know what the time frame is that's perfect, but every year to two, recycle some stuff or do something completely different. So you're not just stuck. Like we're so well known in the running community. If we go work a race, I don't think it should be considered marketing. It's like catching up with people. So we know most of those people. So I'm like, all right, is this good marketing or is this just, face value? It's good face value for the community. But it's not a lot of new faces to the farm.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes what happens is early on, you get a lot of new patients from it. And then later on, you say, oh, I'm not getting a lot of new, like there's a triathlon group that I've sponsored for 13 years now. And I don't get a lot of new patients from them now. They've kind of struggled a little bit, but not too bad. But I got so many of them early on. But now, like the whole group's been a patient of mine, so now they'll still come in, but they're not patients anymore. So it feels differently. But it's good to stay top of mind. Like I just was at a little mixer they had to do that, so that's cool. But yeah, I want to touch on a few things you said there. You kind of mentioned a career arc, and that's one thing I try to make sure younger chiropractors understand is that there is this career arc in that first handful of years, let's call it 0 to 5, sometimes you find yourself saying to yourself, like, God, do I have to do this for the next 35, 40 years? Right. Like it can be a grind and if you're not careful, you don't realize that there's a career arc and that like early on, you're doing a ton of stuff and then you get that momentum going and you build it. And then all of a sudden you get to carve out what the career looks like for you. And we're going to kind of talk about that, how now, like, if I asked you in 2015 or 2016 to start teaching chiropractors things, you'd be like, I don't have time to wipe my ass, let alone doing that. But you get that career arc going and you can start to do things that kind of fill a passion within the profession, which is pretty cool. You mentioned kind of recycling. The other thing that I thought about when you mentioned recycling, that is also if you are a owner doctor in established practice or you are a younger DC in a practice, is you could also recycle some of the old points of contact, let's call them, whether they're MDs or coaches, golf instructors, yoga joints, whatever, that the clinic had at one point, but now the owner or owners are too busy to really reconnect and facilitate those. And so I always recommend that the owner and the younger DC or the associate DC collaborate together to take some of those historical contacts that the clinic had and try to, let's call it, refurbish that a little bit. And maybe you start to build a book of business there. And that's one of the benefits of, like you mentioned, kind of that intrapreneur, like building your practice within the walls of an existing brand or clinic that's been there for a while, is you can kind of hyper speed it a little bit if you're strategic with it.
Well, that's something that I look for now. When you look for a new doc or, interns, you're not really getting, it's not like you're interviewing them for a job. So you get, a lot of people in the doors. But when we look for docs, like, yeah, you want the technical competency and a good personality, but then you're also, one of the biggest things is, kind of like the Disney World mentality. Like if there's a piece of trash, like pick it up without you being told to. And then what I found is that will parlay into marketing. So hey, who could I contact? Hey, I saw that you used to work with these people. I talked to this person. Do you know them? And I tell them, I'm like I said, like we can make it 10 times easier than it ever was for us. So just like use me as a resource, but I won't be able to just give you a booklet that delivers this plan. You can go out and kind of like explore and they're like, oh yeah, we know them. We can connect to here. I already got that one. Like, so yeah, it's just faster. Yeah, I've looked for those personality traits of like self-starters, not needing to have every direction told to go. And I find that to be, that even goes for learning. Like you're going to be, create that self-learning journey. It keeps going. So that's really important to me because, like we all have, we get a variety of people through the office. And sometimes you see somebody that wants more time outside of the office early in your career. And you're like, that's fine. But like, you're going to define what the next 10 years look like by this first year. And I'm trying to get you to flip that around, like you said. And yeah, we've just kind of had to learn the lesson, the hard way sometimes. Like, okay,
Ye-
it's not a great fit based on what you and we think is good marketing, and then how that transfers into the clinic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one of like if you're a DC listening to this and you aren't in your first 5 years, or maybe you're not even in your first 5 years of owning your own practice, right? You're 10 years in, give or take, but the practice isn't going the way you hoped it would or wanted to. You may have to be honest and say, okay, I almost have to pretend I'm back to year zero, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna, and I'm gonna, if you're married with kids or whatever, you're gonna sit down with the spouse and say, okay, yeah, like I got to pretend like this is a new clinic, and I got to put this 0 to 5 years work into this and jumpstart it. It's kind of like, you hear chiropractors, people that are, in their early 30s in a particular career. We've had a couple recently interns that they were in a different career, and they went back to chiropractic school at a later date. And they're saying, okay, we're going back to 0 to 5 years, but I mean, I know in the long run this is going to benefit. So
Hmm.
if you're 35 years old and the clinic's not going the way you want it to, just say, you know what, if I really buckle down and I
Hmm.
really do this, and I pretend like this is the first year I've opened this clinic, by the time I'm 40, I'll have something that's awesome. And then I have bought back my time, and I've obviously still got plenty of career left in me. So I want to make sure people understand that. Let's take a short break from today's episode to tell you about the best decision I've made in my clinic in the last 10 years. And that has been adding shockwave therapy to our clinic. The outcomes have been really impressive. Certain conditions we were struggling with in the past, we're now seeing results with the shockwave therapy for that. And second of all, the ROI has been really good. When you make a big investment in something, you want to see a return. And we're seeing that return in clinical outcomes and in our investment. And that's been really nice to see. I chose Keenest Medical for 4 reasons. One is the technology is top notch. You have to have great technology. There's a lot out there that isn't quite up to snuff. The second thing is they have a really good clinical training. They have an exclusive partnership with Academy of Shockwave Excellence so that you can become clinically proficient in shockwave. You do need to get skilled at it. I think that's a big differentiator between practices that are getting great results and seeing the ROI is they have a great clinical aspect to that as well. So you want to get trained appropriately. Third is they have in-house service team for all of your technical support, which is key when you're investing in a machine like this. And then lastly, they have a very in-depth marketing and business support for you so that you can launch this into your practice effectively, that you can get that ROI on it, that you can get the clinical outcomes. And they also have really good financing options if you need that. So go to kinasmedical.com, KINAS medical.com, mention MCM podcast and receive a free shockwave in practice book with a purchase of a unit. So that's kinasmedical.com, KINAS medical.com, and mention MCM podcast. The other thing I wanted to kind of mention from what you said is part of why I wanted to have you on too was that there's always in our profession, there's this there's this misguided thought that to really build a practice and get out there and do marketing and do all that, you kind of have to be cheesy and do all the old school cheesy stuff that chiropractors have done. And I think what you've done well, and what I like chiropractors to do well is one, take massive action to build relationships in the community, and two, treat yourself and your clinic as a leading educator in the community. And that can be done in person or obviously through marketing and social media and video and email, whatever. You've done a good job of that. And I want people to start understanding that's really what it takes to do that. What was some of your beginnings on creating content? Because I think you've done a good job over the years to creating content. Was it something that was easy for you, or did you have to kind of, swallow your pride a little bit and get out there and start doing it? What were some of your early beginnings of that?
Yeah, so I stumbled upon I would, YouTube, in 2000, we graduated in 2013, around 2014 and 15, YouTube videos were the biggest SEO push just overall. I didn't know that. And I was shooting videos to be able to send people videos for exercises. And we had an Excel file with hyperlinks, and I wasn't even publishing the YouTube videos publicly, which is looking back, I'm like, what was I doing? And we'd send those out for rehab. And then I was like, oh, I'm just going to make all these public. And then, I made $8 maybe the first month I did that or whatever through, Google ads. And then, that started growing. That's never made us a ton of money. But one of the things that I had to kind of realize was I was making these little exercise videos for my patients and people loved them. And then I'd get frustrated and be like, why is my YouTube channel growing? And I wasn't entertaining. I was just literally delivering information. I was like, oh, you got to be realistic about the expectation based on the product I was delivering. So that's one of the things that, if I'm being honest, I think had, if you hindsight 2020, go back and be like, okay, I would have done the YouTube different, really leveraged that when it was hot versus kind of this slow trickle over a decade. Because we have a decent YouTube following, it makes money, and, it gets us, some virtual consults. But that I kind of tripped upon. The social media thing, we've always kind of tried to stay, I want to kind of say above the fringe. Like, we didn't try to follow trends really hard. We didn't do a bunch of the goofy stuff. And that was probably me being prideful of, oh, I don't want to, do that. But also I wanted to kind of be portrayed as, okay, we're professional. We can still have fun, but we don't have to kind of do what everybody else is doing. And that's probably not got us a huge following, but it's built a really loyal fan base that knows what to expect when they look at our content.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I've always enjoyed doing was writing. So I started a blog before we actually opened, because I started the website, did a blog, got a really decent kind of following with that, and then parlay that into some early magazine contributions. And just kind of, I'm like a shotgun approach guy. I like doing a lot of different types of stuff. I love, video and photography. I like writing. So I've always tried to use those, and it takes a lot of time. But like you said, those first 2 years, like, I'm going to do a lot, and it's paid dividends in terms of content built that's backlogged. But now I know a process too. Like, I built a really strong process, and I haven't had to have a huge team to keep that process up because it's pretty efficient and pretty lean. We could always do things better, a million times better in terms of social media today, but now it's a decision point of how much do I want to put into that versus an established practice. And, I might get one of my new younger docs to kind of school me up on what I need to be doing now to make the social media boom. Yeah.
It's always changing, right?
100%.
That's been the hard part of naming my company Modern Chiropractic Marketing when I did it, because like everybody expected me to keep up with all the modern stuff. Still don't do TikTok, but we're there. I want to tell you about something my clinic has recently integrated because I think it's relevant to much of what we talk about on this show. If you're maxed out and can't take new patients, or patients are getting better and just leaving, you don't have a clinical problem, you have a systems problem. That's what P2P Pathway solves for you. It's a model that takes your patients from rehab into ongoing strength and performance programming inside your existing practice using Tonal's AI driven equipment. No trainer required, no separate gym build out. The result is recurring monthly revenue that doesn't depend on how many patients you can personally see in a day. They run live seminars where they walk you through the entire system, hands on, in person. Attendees also get exclusive discounts on equipment, including Tonal, that you can't get anywhere else. Seats are limited. The link is in the show notes. If you're serious about adding a recurring revenue stream to your practice, this is worth your 2 days. So check out www.p2ppathway.com. So let's transition a little bit because mentioning content and creating content, you have also done some things for the profession, which is pretty cool. And in teaching that, you have your own podcast. Tell us a little bit about that podcast. I know I was a guest on it, but give our audience a little bit of a update on that.
Yeah. So I started podcasting, I think in 2016, because we moved into a new office and I had a little room that I could do it out of. And it wasn't that podcasts were new then, they were fledgling, but I got really lucky because I got people like, Kelly Streb, Brian McKenzie, just cold, honestly, I think DMing these people. That doesn't happen today. Like I'm trying to get some bigger guests on the next podcast round, and it's not that easy anymore.
It's hard now.
Yeah. So I got lucky and did that. And I've kind of went on and off, but now it's called the Farmcast and we have another season that we're gearing up for. But yeah, I've tried to get, all the people that we probably know of, a lot of people we respect in the profession, people outside the profession, and just kind of have conversations either in their area of expertise or even trying to get them to kind of cross pollinate. And then this next round, I'm really trying to get people outside the profession that are working on expertise and mastery and what can they teach us in terms of, well, how do we just do this, walk in the path to mastery for the rest of our career and the rest of our life? Because that's what I'm interested in. So as Tim Ferriss would say when he writes a book, like I'm scratching my own itch, and that's what the podcast is now. Yeah. And then in terms of, other things for the profession, I've been lucky enough to, teach at some of the bigger stages, and I got involved with rehab to performance early on, which put me in positions to kind of teach and be in front of student bodies. And that kind of led me to developing my own coursework that I was just kind of interested in. And again, slow playing that. I have, haven't pushed all my chips over to the education realm, just kind of a hobby. But it keeps me sharp. I think that's one of the bigger things of me being on a stage or me talking to students is I always kind of tell students if they are interested in teaching, whatever your subject matter is, imagine that the world expert is in the crowd and whatever you say, they're getting ready to call you out on it. So you just want to be like as up to date as you can be, as sharp as you can be, and be, willing to get called out, be able to have a good conversation about it. And that's what I've tried to do. So it's just forced me to kind of stay ahead as much as I possibly can, which feels impossible sometimes. Yeah, I like doing it. So that's, I wouldn't do it if I didn't like it.
Yeah, that's good. And, I think it gives people, again, part of that career arc, you get a certain level where the practice become like strategic coach talks about having a self-managing business. And then they talk about that higher level being a self-multiplying business where it can start to grow without you having to do everything essentially. And when you can get that career arc going there, then you can start to do things like that, maybe fill the other bucket up professionally, like teaching or whatever it may be. And that's ultimately, that's how MCM started, was just a kind of something that I was doing for free for a couple years, and then listen to my audience and develop kind of wrap the business around that. So it's cool when you can kind of get outside of the four walls of your practice sometimes and enjoy doing that.
Yeah,
Teaching.
if I can, if I'm kind of the guy, if I can create variety, like, this week I started out, you teach a couple clinics to local groups. We're doing FMS screens for firefighters. You're bouncing around, like doing a podcast. Like that's what I want my weeks to feel like. That's not reality year 1, 2 in practice for most people, because you're just grinding, seeing patients. So I look back and I'm like, okay, I'm glad I did all that because it's got me where I am. And it, it can feel like a grind now just doing all that, but it's much more suits my personality, which also kind of multiplies my energy. So I don't get drugged down into the grind. So yeah, I'm where I want to be right now. And, I'm only the controller of my destiny. So hopefully I don't put myself in a position I don't want to be.
Yeah. And ironically, it can help stave off burnout, right? Like it
100%.
sounds like
Yep.
it's like, oh, that's a lot doing a lot of things. That probably would burn me out. So it actually, and a lot of times if you're working on the things you want to do, it actually helps prevent it.
Yeah. Yeah. If you had to put me, and I would do it.
Yeah.
So we've talked before, Sloan and I will sit around at dinner and I'm sure like something will come up tonight. We're going to go out to on a date for the first time in a long time. And we'll be like, God, if everybody left, like everybody quit or something, like, could we go back and see all these patients? I'm like, oh man,
Yeah.
I would, but I don't want to. So it's, always work. I like I heard Joe Montana talking about like have a plan and have a dream. Like I can have a fallback plan, and I'm always kind of thinking for that, what we call like a black hat pivot. Like if this went south, could I be in a position to still salvage it? But the dream is to keep moving further away from that. And you just got to kind of check yourself every once in a while that you're not getting too far in the clouds. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I think it was either be an attorney or something, or be a
Yeah.
quarterback. And his dad was like, well, being a quarterback in the NFL, that's a dream, but let's have a plan also.
And he still became an attorney while in the NFL.
Yeah. I think it was Steve Young, right? It was Steve
Or
Young.
Steve Young. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
I
Steve
think
Young.
it was Steve Young. But yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool interview for sure. So, all right, cool. Let's transition into what's the future like. Tell me about what you guys are thinking as far as the practice, you and Sloan, maybe your professional career goals, what you're looking at as far as a vision. I know you are a vision driven person, and I'd love to hear what that looks like.
Yeah. So for the clinic, I want to turn it into more of a teaching center. I mean, we're lucky enough to, like I said, be involved with the R2P group, which keeps a decent flow of students coming in and interns and preceptors. But I'd like to see us host more courses in general, but then also kind of be sought after, whether that's both online and in person, of a kind of a teaching center where people matriculate through. We almost have a bit of a curriculum, even for a day shadow, right? It's not just, hey, show up and watch what's going on. So I'd like to work on that. And that takes team, right? I can't handle that because I won't always be here. So that's one thing with the clinic. And then, we could house one more doctor right now. I think we're humming pretty good right now with 4 of us, and Sloan only practices actively 1 day a week.
Mm-hmm.
That's working, but there's capacity for 1 more, and then that can grow to 2 more probably in the next 3 years. So we're not looking to just, I'm also very realistic for what I want. When I think about a huge practice, that kind of, to me, like I get a little like anxious thinking about like 10, 12 docs or multiple locations. And I mean, some of my friends that are in other business, avenues, like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you opening a second location? Anytime I think about it, I just get anxiety, and maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm, self-sabotaging. But I think a big part of that is I like to do all these other things. So I'm trying to build the farm as the educational center or institute for a lot of the things I want to keep teaching. And we literally use the farm as like the testing grounds. Like, hey, if I'm going to teach people about world-class assessment techniques, are we actually doing that? I'm pointing at a whiteboard that Kevin can see behind me. Like, are we actually implementing this in our own clinic? Or are we just out here teaching something that's, not real? So I'd like to see us really become kind of a centerpiece, even though we're not near a school. I guess there's a chiro school in Alabama that's opening up next year down in Troy.
Right. How far is that from you?
It's like 3 hours. And we've talked to Tim Stark a little bit, just kind of, saying hi, and we're here and available if anything, you need us. So I'd love to see, more things happen with them, but, we're not in the backyard of a school, and it's not super easy, but that's something I want to build for the future for sure.
Yeah. At least you're in Birmingham. It's not too hard to get there.
It's not. And I mean, we're kind of in a center hub. If you looked out at a bunch of schools, and we have a ton of shadows come through, and I'm always extremely thankful and kind of flattered that they'll fly in for a day or two or drive, on the way home or back on a break. So I hope we keep that up as we, as our other docs get busy and they get further out from school. Do we keep those younger contacts, or do we kind of, get further away? So I need to build a program to keep that going.
Yeah, definitely. And then what kind of courses are you teaching? And I know you mentioned R2P, but anything else? Maybe your own running course. Are you still doing running courses?
Yeah, I'll be teaching one in Columbus in the first weekend of August. And I started teaching I call it Rethinking Running Rehab, or RX3, I want to say in 2019. And from that course, I kind of had an epiphany that, oh, I'm really teaching a lot of assessment, like how to look at things differently or how to have a system applied to your assessment. Out of that came the art of assessment, which is kind of my now overarching theme. And I have online courses. We have a course coming to St. Louis and one here this year. And I'm really trying to bulletproof our systems. And we call them ecosystems. And I'm trying to kind of, and this is my own faults, I'm trying to tell students they're coming out with way more information, tools, and techniques than I did. I know that I felt lost when I was first in practice. So I'm like, well, who's actually teaching you to be a clinician? Like, and that sounds a little, like I'm demeaning the clinicians they worked with. That's not at all. But it's like, how do you integrate this stuff? How do you create a plan? How do you work from the beginning and end? I definitely didn't have that. I don't see that happening a lot. And I'd like to help students, new docs, and then even, myself. This, was birthed out of my own need of, can we clean up the process? And I think your job gets a lot easier and a lot more fun when you don't just kind of walk into every visit like, okay, what do I do now? What do I do now? Like, how am I going through this methodically, and how do I tighten my feedback loops?
Yeah, I'm glad I'm old enough to where when I came out, just knowing how to palpate, adjust, and some soft tissue was all we were really getting pretty good at. And then I was able to layer on after the fact, so I wasn't, just kind of swimming in six different types of
Yeah.
methodologies and not knowing how to put it together.
Huge blessing. I tell all our interns and shadows the same thing. They're like, well, how did you put this all together when you came out? I didn't have, it was one piece at a time. And then like you said, when you're in active practice and you get something, you kind of, even while you're being taught it, know where you'd apply it, you frame it different. So yeah, Brett Winchester again says that people are swimming in information or knowledge and they're just drowning for application. And that to me is like, okay, like what can we do about that? So yeah, I hope I do a decent job, and I hope it keeps getting better as we hone the course and sharpen it over the next few years.
That's awesome, man. Well, this has been a pleasure. If they want to reach out, whether they want to shadow, intern, or if a DC wants to attend one of your courses, how can they find out what you're doing?
Yeah. So the practice website, if you just ever want to check that out, chirofarm.com. The educational site is thefarmuniversity.com. And then you can always just email me. It's drbeaubeard@gmail.com. It's all over the internet. So it's fine. And literally I have, students get a hold of us, and everybody's welcome to come shadow. That's like a doors always open policy.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, keep it up. It's exciting seeing what you're doing, and I'm looking forward to having dinner with you and Rich Olm here in a couple weeks or a week.
Absolutely. Be good to meet you in person finally.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, have a good one, and tell Sloan I said hello.
Will do, man. Thanks for having me on.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. And if you want to make the shift from busy, broke, and broken to time-free and cash confident, or you just want to continue with the exponential growth, check us out at modernchiropracticmarketing.com. Look at the MCM Mastery tab, watch the short video on there, and check out what we are doing now for evidence-informed chiropractors. We are equal parts coaching and marketing done for you. Yes, you shoot some videos, we help you with campaign strategies and ideas and really become a thought leader in your community. You shoot those videos, you send them to us, we produce, edit, and brand them to you. Then we distribute them through all of your channels. We also take them and we turn it into one good blog per month. And every other month, we have Darcy Sullivan producing a robust blog with a topic that you pick from her database to help with your SEO. So we essentially become your content marketing agency to make sure your practice is always having ethical, elegant content marketing to help grow your practice. On the coaching side, we also help you with everything from marketing ideas to business, communications, finances, anything practice growth, and really try to help prevent you from being stuck on that island. And we hold you accountable. We have a great group of doctors that are just doing amazing things, and we look forward to help you out to take that next step in your practice. So again, check us out at modernchiropracticmarketing.com and learn more.